What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for my playoff ranking projection as we head into Week 13, rivalry week. And we've still got 5 Power 5 teams undefeated. This might be the first time in the playoff era that we've had 5 undefeated Power 5 teams this late in the season. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody can look that up. But it's potentially all going to work itself out, and we're going to have 4 undefeated Power 5 champions going to the college football playoff, or we might see some upsets here, and we might see some controversy, some drama here down the stretch. Going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out. So let's get into the projections here. And I tell you what, there were a bunch of teams near the bottom of the rankings that lost, and it kind of makes it tough. It makes it tough to project, especially the final few spots. But this is what I'm going with. This is what I think the committee is going to do. I think Tulane is still sitting there at number 21. They were around that spot last week, so I don't see a big change there. And then I think Tennessee, the committee seems to really like Tennessee, so I think they're going to keep them ranked as the top 4-loss team. You see a couple of 4-loss teams here in my projections. They lost to the number 1 team in the country, so I don't think they're going to be penalized a ton, but I do see them dropping some. I think NC State makes it into the rankings. Look, this team's 8-3. Have not been ranked yet, but if you're at this point in the season and you've only got 3 losses, you're in the Power 5, I think you should be ranked, and I think the committee is going to see that. Same thing with North Carolina. Even though they lost again, I still think they're going to be ranked. These are 3-loss teams, and there are no 3-loss teams that I don't have in the projection, and I kind of think that would be wrong if you had a 3-loss team not ranked. NC State does have a win over Clemson, one over Miami, not great wins, but they don't have any bad losses, so I think they should be ranked this week, and I think they will be ranked. I think Clemson, after beating North Carolina, they make their way into the rankings at 7-4. You look at what they've done this season, they have not lost to any bad teams. They don't have any bad losses. You could say Miami, Duke, not great losses there, but they've got wins over Notre Dame and North Carolina, 2 teams that I believe will be ranked. So I think Clemson's there at 24, and then again, North Carolina at 25. I think Liberty should be ranked. I don't think that they will be, but you look at this Liberty team, they're undefeated, and they've got wins over New Mexico State, who just beat Auburn, and another win over Jacksonville State, who's a pretty good team. Again, they're undefeated, so I believe Liberty should be ranked, but I don't think they're going to be, just because I think these teams, they're gonna value these teams a little bit more based off of what we've seen so far. So what if they do rank Liberty, does North Carolina not make it in? And then we have a 3-loss Power 5 team not ranked. So yeah, I don't know how that's going to go. We shall see Tuesday night. Next we go to 16 through 20. I've got Oregon State at 16. I don't think they drop a ton for losing to a top 5 team. Iowa at 17, kind of hanging out, same spot as last week, or close to it. Notre Dame at 18, same thing for them. Oklahoma State and Kansas State. So look, they had Kansas State ranked ahead of Oklahoma State last week by a couple of spots, and both teams won. And Kansas State even had a better win. They beat Kansas, but I don't see how they could rank Kansas State 1 spot ahead of Oklahoma State when you compare the resumes and you look at head-to-head. So just comparing these 2 teams, their resumes, Oklahoma State has wins over Oklahoma, West Virginia, and Kansas. Kansas State has a win over Kansas, and that is it. And then you also add in the win for Oklahoma State over Kansas State. So 4 quality wins for Oklahoma State, only 1 for Kansas State. And then also the fact that Oklahoma State beat them head-to-head. The only issue here is the losses. Oklahoma State does have worse losses, but the committee so far, earlier in these rankings didn't seem to care too much about who you lost to. So I think they might put Kansas State ahead of Oklahoma State just because they had them there last week, but I think that would be wrong, and it really just wouldn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to go with this projection, but again, don't be surprised if the committee screws that up and puts Kansas State ahead of Oklahoma State. All right, next, 11 through 15, I've got Penn State at 11, Ole Miss at 12. Both teams kind of in the same spot. Same thing for Oklahoma. Same thing for LSU. Really no big changes here. I think Arizona jumps up ahead of Iowa. A big win for them over Utah. This team has a pretty nice resume when you look at it. They've got wins over Oregon State, Utah, and UCLA. All pretty solid wins. And then for Iowa, their best wins are Rutgers and Iowa State. They just don't have much on the resume. And so even with a 2 loss, I think Arizona does get ahead of Iowa here. this week, and so that's what I'm projecting, 11 through 15. No real drama. 6 through 10 looks just like last week. I do think Louisville jumps Missouri. They've only got one loss. Missouri has two. Missouri struggled with Florida. We know about the recency bias with this committee. They seem to really look at what you've done lately, and even maybe the last week. Louisville beat a pretty good Miami team. And, also you look at Missouri's resume, taking a hit with Tennessee, losing again. I just think if you compare the resumes, Louisville has Notre Dame and NC State on the resume. I think NC State will be ranked now. Duke, Boston College, Miami, those are teams that are over 500. And they've only got one loss. Missouri has two losses. So I think Louisville will jump back ahead of Missouri. But, I had Louisville ahead of Missouri last week, and that's not the way it went. So it may not go that way, but that's what I am projecting. And then we'll get to the top 5. I think we do see a change. I think Washington just does jump up to number 4. Last week, I did not project Washington ahead of Florida State. I had them at 5. Everyone told me Washington was going to be 4. I was right. Well, this week, I think Washington does make that jump for a couple of reasons. For one, the resume is just better. I mean, they have a better resume than Florida State. They've got wins over Oregon, Arizona, Oregon State, and Utah, who has been ranked. Also, USC, who has been ranked. You look at Florida State wins over LSU and Clemson. That's about it. Duke, Boston College, Miami, those are decent wins. But also the Jordan Travis injury, I think that will play maybe some part in these rankings. And what if Florida State struggles without Jordan Travis, but they win their final 2 games? Could the committee potentially put a one-loss team, let's say a one-loss Oregon or a one-loss Texas, ahead of Florida State because they don't have Jordan Travis? I don't think that would be fair to Florida State. But I don't really know what the committee is going to do. I don't know if we've seen a situation just like this. You have to reward the team, though. It's not, I realize he's the quarterback, but he's not the whole team. And if they can go out and win their final 2 games, I don't think a one-loss team should be ranked ahead of Florida State. Will the committee view it that way? I don't know. And then the top 3, I think, is going to be the same: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan struggling with Maryland, close game. Is there a chance that Washington could jump all the way ahead of Michigan? I'm going to say no. I don't think they go all the way from 5 to 3, but I do think, again, they move up to 4, and Michigan is still sitting there at number 3. And, man, wow, Georgia just continues to dominate. They blow out Tennessee on the road. Ohio State took care of business. So it's going to be, again, clear-cut. If Georgia wins out, Ohio State and Michigan will play each other. If Washington wins out, if Florida State wins out, we're going to have 4 undefeated teams. And I would even say if Oregon beats Washington, it's pretty clear-cut. Oregon will be in, and Texas and Alabama, if Alabama loses to Georgia, obviously they'll be left out. But Texas would be that Power 5 team that is left out. I don't see them passing Oregon if both teams win out, especially if Oregon, is able to knock off an undefeated Washington in the Pac-12 championship. And another thing that I don't think people have been thinking about is, if Alabama beats Georgia, is Georgia really going to fall from 1 to 5? That's really never happened. Losing to a top 10 team, you're number 1 in the country. Those teams have never dropped that much. So what would happen? Could Georgia still get in, even if they lose to Alabama? A lot of scenarios that we'll be talking about here as we get to those conference championships. But these are my projections for the rankings tomorrow night. Give me your projections and your thoughts on these projections down in the comments below.